kind of gives you an idea of where this stuff comes from.
Does that 617 include monies that the organizers spent?
No,
It
no,
doesn't.
no.
Do we have any handle on that?
I don't. I don't. Tom might know exactly. I do not. We strictly did it from the standpoint of the visitor because the only way I can be accurate with this is based on survey. Okay, and making sure that I'm only interpreting the results that were given to me. I don't want to, because if I start to add that in right or wrong, it's going to change that. It's going to change that number. Now that doesn't mean that that's not part of the economic impact. It just has to be evaluated separately of the information that I've just given you.
Do you have anything?
The 617, I'm not sure.
No, the mentioned in Wayne's analysis that doesn't include any money spent by organizers. Do you have any handle on that?
You mean the actual money spent by organizers in this community? I can put those figures together for him. I can break that out of all the expenses and figure out.
Andrew, any feedback to you from some of the guys, shopkeepers?
From the, regarding the film festival, I think there was, in general, there was definitely a level of excitement that an event like this came downtown. People were excited about it. People that I talked to, even outside of downtown, I think the marketing impact was phenomenal because I think you can see in the survey too, there was 32, if I'm not mistaken, different sources of where people got the information about the Connecticut Film Festival. I've heard back people saying, oh yeah, you guys were all over the place. And I think even if for people who were unable to attend, it was on their radar. And should the event happen again, I think people would go out of their way to make sure that they supported it at least one day.
Joe?
The surrounding restaurants, Nico's, Toscano's,
Oh yeah, George
parties.
was very happy.
George was very happy.
George was very, very happy.
Were you happy, Joe?
Tickle pink also. There were some parties at Two Steps, if I'm not mistaken, in the general downtown. Some of the shops right around the theater, I thought it caught them a little off guard. They didn't realize that there would be these many people for that long in downtown. Eliza's store, just a couple of the other shops right there said they were not prepared for it. They were not prepared to stay open later. They weren't prepared for the big group of people that joined into downtown. Going a little further down, came down to Toscano's and Two Steps. I think the overflow after the parties, before the events took place, I think everybody was pleased with their turnout. I think that had the greatest impact in downtown entertainment areas.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, Paul?
Yeah, through the chair to Jim. Just want to get clear on these figures. The 107 and the 100. The 100 is the average with the 1352 removal, correct?
Yes.
And the primary figure is 368 this year.
That's reflecting the 100.
Right, so we multiply 100 times 14, 4,000.
132, I believe.
But if you multiply, I'm just going to off the top of my head here. David, you jump in because you're the guy. If you multiply 100 times 4,000,
You get 412,000.
right. So how did we wind up with 342?
Because this we talked. No. Hang on.
No, this is before the multiplier.
No.
The daily.
The daily visit. You cannot assume that every person in the survey spent $100 in one day. What you have to do is you have to look at, and if you go to one of the questions, it tells you how many, the percentage of people surveyed, how many of them were here one day, how many of them were here 2 days, how many of them were here 3 days, how many were here 4 or more days. So what I did at that point, recognizing that I had to break it out that way to be accurate, I applied that percentage to the total numbers. So the number is a reflection of the fact that if you attended this event two days by the survey, you were credited it at 50 hours a day instead of 100 hours a day, in terms of coming up with an accurate number. Okay? If you were here 3 days, you got credited at 33 hours a day. And I did it by percentages so that I had a comfort level. I mean, it's my reputation in terms of analyzing this and putting it together. I have a comfort level that this is accurate information and what I consider conservative information by pulling the numbers out like that. Not going with what would be the obvious, which is multiply 41 times 100. Well, that may or may not be true. I'm not comfortable. That's why we broke it out. That's one of the reasons we asked the question with multi-day events. We asked the question, how many days were you participating? And then we know that we can start to back the numbers off of that.
Okay. If you
Did I answer?
No, see, here's the thing. Here's what I don't understand. I mean, I got that, and that's fine. But what I don't understand is that if you spend $100, you spend $100. Whether you want to break it down, let's say we had a 10-day festival, everybody spends $100, but some guys are there for a day, so they spend $100 on one day. Some guys are there for 10, they spend $10 a day. In the aggregate, they're still spending $100, and there's still 4,000 people spending $100.
But they're not.
Well, see,
It's
that's
day visits. It's day
But the
visits
342 is the aggregate total.
of day visits. So in other words, when I'm crediting, if you attended every day,
I did. Yeah.
okay? I'm only if you had written to, if your average was $100, I'm counting you as 4 visits,
Okay.
4-day visits, okay? And I am not going to take that $100 and apply it 4 times. I'm going to take that $100 and apply it 25 hours each day.
But if this is this 342 total spending or daily spending?
That's total for the entire
All
event.
right. I'm completely confused, but let's let it pass and move on. Somebody else.
Am I not doing this clearly?
I'm sure you are. I'm not.
Okay. No,
That's
I
okay.
understand.
I'll have somebody.
It's easy for me because I deal with this stuff all the time. You're the money man. Am I?
I understand.
Yeah.
You're speaking my language. But
What I gather is the first day, you're more inclined to spend more money than you might spend on the second day, third day.
Yeah, there are models. There are models that say that. I didn't go there. I just divided it straight out. If you were here for if the average per day visit is $100 and you accounted for 4-day visits, you spent $25 a day.
It's the average per person.
Yeah.
But you still spent $100.
That's correct.
If all 4,000 people spent that $100.
on average.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, just the 4,000 people wasn't really 4,000 people.
It's day visits. It's day visits.
Feel better now?
Now I got it.
In other words, you're not.
We'll see you later. Have a nice
In other words, it's not 4,000 people at one time who spent $100.
I got it.
Mr. Chairman, so Paul, in your case, you bought, remember we talked about you bought the week-long pass?
Right.
And I said I should have bought it too, because I probably was only there 2 days, but I actually spent more than you did for my 2-day visits, and that's why it's a conservative.
So we're not talking about attendees, we're talking about day visits. Got it, thank you, we can move
Now,
on.
were you guys done 1,300?
No, but I can see it.
I'd love to find out who that 13.
But I
That's
tell you.
all. Who's in the house?
Yeah, I can see a party without a problem.
Yeah, but just so you understand, whenever there's an anomaly like that, you got to pull it
Okay.
because you don't know what it is.
If I may continue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Zip codes.
Yes,
In your estimation, because I know you didn't break it down.
about 50% is
So
Danbury.
50% came from Danbury.
What's
and-
yeah,
So
and
half the people, half the people didn't come from there.
yeah.
We drew, instead of lifting yourself up by your own bootstraps, the taxpayers are paying for this and they're attending, we got taxpayers paying for this, but we've got people from out of town
The most
who are
interesting.
contributing half of this 600 and X amount of
Economic
dollars
impact.
from out of Danbury.
The most interesting.
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
The most interesting statistic in this whole report is 14.9% were out of state. I'm going to be real honest with you. I was stunned when I saw that in the surveying. Stunned. I was expecting you know, give or take 8, and I think we talked about it at one point, I was give or take 6 to 8%. You see 14, essentially 15% of the reported, of the survey respondents. Remember, this is survey respondents. Statistically, this has a 95% accuracy plus or minus 3%. Okay, if you're into statistics. Okay, so I'm really comfortable that that 15%, 14.9% is a true number if you applied it to all 4,000 day visits. Is that you had 15% from outside the state. Now, where were they from? They were from New York. I mean, you know, let's face it. I mean, there were people that traveled closer from New York than did from Connecticut. You know, but they are New York.
You've got some strange zip codes in here. What's the furthest one? Do you remember what the furthest one was?
I think it was a California one. I think it was a California one. And I think that was a filmmaker.
There's also the 3 or more day stay ones. That was a higher percentage.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was high too.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. The multiple day things were higher than I expected. I expected more single visits rather than multiple visits. Multiple visits are a good thing for you in terms of the potential to increase your economic impact.
Through the chair, I'm really not sure. I read just most of the information, but I'm more on the marketing side and sales as opposed to numbers kind of being. But I can tell you this: there was a buzz in Danbury that we needed at that particular time. A positive. I have a business in Danbury. The marketing that was done, I thought, was for the first time was incredible. That so many people were aware of the festival. Now, I think we can only build on what we have now, because so many people said to me that came to my office, said, I heard it was fantastic. I heard downtown looked like a little whatever, but it looked great. They wish they had gone down there. And in true spirit of marketing, next year, hopefully, or excuse me, this year, 09, is going to be double the success that we had last year, hopefully. Because of the awareness, but the marketing, whoever in charge of the marketing, kudos to that, because and the News Times also had awareness practically every day about the festival on the front page, and that's exactly what we needed. So,
and from a marketing standpoint, also one of the key things that the survey pointed out: 30 different sources of how they heard about it.
yeah,
So it's unusual to see that many different sources.
I mean, there were banners on the corners of streets, tags that were in the newspapers everywhere. But I think this year, you throw in that, that old Prel commercial, and one person tells one person tells one. You throw that effect on, and we are going to have a very successful and positive. And that's exactly what we need to promote the arts and promote Danbury. If we want to step up with that in the big leagues, and we want to make that step, we better be able to support it beyond, having whatever. But this is the way to go. And I was proud of my city that, and I can tell you that.
I just wanted to comment in regards to the marketing. One of the things that really excited me about the festival was that, I forget what the number is, but the large percentage of people who attended the festival for the first time, and it wasn't just all repeat people. I remember it was pretty high. So that, from my perspective, that was a very exciting
81% were first timers.
Councilman, but I would also say that I drove the state, not every town, but many different areas, and signs were up throughout, and that really drew people from our entire state to our city. We were truly showcasing Danbury.
I agree with Charlie. I mean, we had a little more than 3 months with this thing together. Think of what we could do with 6 or 8 months if we had the time to do it, and the marketing and branding that we could do.
The only question you may have covered this time, the surveys that were passed out, the questionnaire, how, I didn't see them, so I'm sure there's a percentage of people that never filled them out.
That's correct. There were 2 ways that were done. There were some that were done in person. We realized immediately that that was problematic because people did not want to take the time. Okay. Then we did what we always do, and we always have both. Most of these surveys were done online. which is why you have significant written comments. Normally, if someone's filling out a survey on a site, they just, even if you're interviewing. We actually handed out cards for the entire week saying, and we're giving, there's actually someone that's going to win a weekend getaway for having filled out the survey. So basically we just said, would you please go to this to this online site, fill out this survey, you'll be eligible for a drawing for a weekend getaway. We probably handed out 1,000 of those, and maybe even a little more, and we got 25% return, which that's really good.
That's very good.
In terms of people coming back. Just so everybody, to give everybody a comfort level, I can look at every survey and tell where it came from. So in other words, it's virtually impossible to...
So Tom's not in the room
Yeah,
somewhere?
Tom's not in the room typing these things up, because I can tell from the IP addresses and a couple of other things that are keyed in on the survey thing, that I can tell when that happens. That was the first thing I looked at when the 1352, I looked at, where did that come from? It came from, I think it was somewhere down in Fairfield County, I don't remember exactly where, but it was not immediately local.
And then just two quick follow-ups. So that number of your day visits really is a very conservative estimate, because it's only the people that actually filled out the survey. I know I was in a room with 450 people for American Nationality, and we didn't know anything about a survey, and I never filled it out. And I went to opening night for Flyboys. I wish I'd stayed. It was a great film. But
survey, and those things were handed out to people as they left, as opposed to going in. And they were outside most of the time, and I had my staff doing that.
And then the second thing is that in the survey comments, there's, which I'm sure Tom's probably reviewing, going to debrief the staff and everything. There were overwhelmingly positive, but there's always some nudgy people in there. I'm sure you're going to try to address some of those concerns that were articulated. I don't necessarily think they're on point, but and you certainly have to dismiss one person as a bad experience. That doesn't mean it. But if there's an overall, you're going to sort of analyze those and see if there's any kind of theme coming through.
We have done that, Mayor. All four of us together went through each one.
We went through each one of them, and by the way, you have every one of them, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
Nothing was culled from this. Everything exactly as I got it, and I grouped it together so you can understand it, but everything is what we got. There were a couple of things that we noticed that were keyed in on that were constructive, and those are the ones we'll be looking at.
Yeah, there seems to be one or two, maybe three comments about organization, or the lack thereof. And I suspect with a little bit more time to do the planning, we can probably remedy that problem by those products.
That's the guy from the Norwalk Film Festival. One thing, I hope next year, the code, I think when you brought it up, if everyone knew along Main Street how popular this was and stayed open beyond the normal 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and I think they'll take advantage of it this year because they really missed key time where they could have, economic.
And financially, Tom, the 1 week pass is economically makes the most sense versus buying individual tickets.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, anyway, you can pump up, it's easier to invest in the whole week.
That's the idea, to bring them into the theater, or bring them to WestCon or other places. You bring in 400 or 500 people into downtown. You're going to put them by storefronts that they never walked by before. You're going to put them by restaurants they've never walked by before. We're exposing the downtown that doesn't get exposure any other time. It becomes a destination that people have to go. You're going to get your film festival on Main Street, downtown Danvers. You're not going to get it at the mall. You're not going to get it on the east side. You're going to get it right. That's what we need to do. Our downtown needs this. And this was a big boost. This was a great time for downtown. It was a week. There's parties going on. There were workshops going here and there. A lot of new faces downtown you never saw, and had no other reason to come downtown except for the film. So that's what we're here for.
It's
Tom's here
again-
for his film
it's
festival.
again-
We're here for the economic activity.
Anyone here would like a feel of this? When you
Yes, I have.
available.
Yes,
Anybody here?
I think most people have.
Yeah, I have a couple of general observations about the film festival, and I just want to preface it by saying I went to as much as I could, bought a $100 ticket, went to movies every day and workshops, and I was ecstatic. I mean, I was a proponent before it happened, and I am even more of a proponent after having gone through the entire process. And as I read through these comments, these written comments, which are, many of them are quite in-depth, and most of them are positive, and I want to say to Chairman Collins and Wayne and the organizers, thank you for including the negative ones too, because it gives us a very accurate and realistic picture, because if we had seen a bunch of glowing reviews, we would have known there was something going on. I think one of the comments was from one of the directors about the bad projection and stuff, but it probably is true that you need to integrate the matinee experience a little bit more with the actual residents of Danbury. Everybody knows it's hard to sell matinee tickets, that's why they sell them for price. So it's not enough to say you need to fill more theaters up during the daytime. Obviously, people go to work at 5 o'clock, not at noon. But Tom and I had talked about this. I had probably spoken with Wayne and Jim and Andrew about this also, but maybe doing something with some of the old age homes in Danbury and getting them in there to fill these theaters, particularly just integrating the people of Danbury into this film festival. To that end, perhaps a couple of months before the festival begins, some over-street signs. I know we've got issues with the state. Attorney Finner might be able to speak on this. We can't put overhead signs at every intersection. But there were probably people in Danbury, mostly because it was the first time, who weren't aware we were having a film festival. And then the other thing, I went to some of these workshops, and it was amazing to see young people there in Danbury learning about how to make movies. It's an extraordinary experience that the movie people are coming to Danbury, that you don't have to go to Chicago or LA or New York or even Southern Fairfield County to get hands-on experience from some working filmmakers. And maybe we could do something with the Board of Ed next spring to let the kids know that these workshops are taking place, to get these young people in, because, you know, youth is the future. If this festival, like other festivals, lasts 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to start seeing the kids of kids who are attending now. But you won't see them if we don't have any kids attending. So there's a couple of things that the organizers could do coming up next year. I don't want to burden you, but I just thought that, you know, we spoke about the finances, and that's good. And I love the film festival. But I saw opportunity to make it even better. And I got to tell you, if we make it even better, because I spoke to a director from New York City who said this was one of the best film festivals he had ever been to, and was calling his friend on a daily basis who were also directors, saying, you've got to come to this film festival, and you have to exhibit next year. And I said to this guy, who I didn't even know, why is this such a great film festival? And he said, because of the people. The outpouring of support from the people is extraordinary in a film festival. And here I am thinking that people in Danbury barely even know that it's occurring. So if he's saying that now, and we get more support from the people in Danbury, this could become a real extraordinary anchor event. So you guys have done, right out of the box, it was amazing. And this gets to be better, we're really going to go away here.
It would be a great thing if people thought about May the way they think about Danbury in September. The Taste of Danbury is in September, and the film festival is May. So it's kind of a branding thing, which is happening. Any further discussion? Dan?
And through the chair, I have several questions to ask. One of the things last year, I'm an accountant by trade, so I'm not in the marketing, I'm in the numbers. So there's strictly more towards numbers here. Last year you were for-profit status, which means you're going to make money. Is there any kind of changing that status to a non-profit status? Whether it be a board dictating the success of the show? Because if you were to leave, what happens to the festival after you?
Yes, I'm in the process of working on it.
Okay, so that would be in effect for this coming May?
I would think so, yes.
So last year, according to the numbers, you spent $104,000
Well, it actually exceeds that, that's as of June, but
to July,
I think it's as of June
104,000.
24th, maybe.
According to this report.
Yeah.
It's 104,257. Now, the city share, we gave you 75,000, which we basically was 75% of your budget. What other revenues did you receive? Did you make money on the show?
There were ticket sales, some very small sponsorships.
Can you give us a listing of what income you had?
I don't have a listing of that with me. But what I was
Can you
doing
provide
was, reporting to the ad hoc committee on the 75,000 spend. So I'm not really prepared for that.
Okay, so there's
And I'm not sure that's part of my reporting to the ad hoc committee.
Is this report a good share? Will this report be a final report with all expenditures and income to date?
Well, it shows that the actual expenses exceeded what the sponsorship from the city was.
So can we get a listing of total income and expenses?
I don't know, I guess, can you speak to that point?
I don't know, I don't have the revenue, so from Jim and you would have the revenue side. But, you know, from my standpoint, I guess I wasn't, I don't want to manage Tom's business. I feel like we sponsored an event, we got a great benefit from it, and the values that we gained far exceeded our $75,000. If he made $100,000 himself or lost $20,000, well, that's his issue. That's the way I would approach this as a business person.
I'll follow up. Again, to the chair, to the finance director. Should we, other grant agencies, when they ask the city for funds, we ask them for several items of financial reports. So is there some type of policy that we should treat any other funders differently when they ask the city for funds?
Well, other grant
Do
agencies.
you have a partner, anybody?
Through
Chair,
through the chair. Well, Tom's agency is not a not-for-profit, and we didn't give him a grant. We hired him to promote this film festival. That's what we hired him to do.
So basically just hired him as a vendor just to do this event.
Right.
75,000 for the go. And no type of report.
I don't understand you.
Well, there was no figure. If I could just interject, I mean, we don't ask the paving company that does paving for us to provide audited statements to us. We don't ask a paper vendor to provide paper for us to provide audited statements. We're purchasing a service from Mr. Carruthers designed to bring people into the city. This isn't a grant agency where they're providing a public service in the sense of social services to other members, and it's not an ongoing investment that we're making. This is a case-by-case, event-by-event investment. That's why we're here tonight. So I think it's really fair to ask Mr. Carruthers to disclose his entire accounting practices, bookkeeping. We just have to make a decision. Are we going to invest in this again next year or not? And that may be a reason why you don't want to. It's certainly a viable one if you want full accountability, but it's not that kind of organization. We're purchasing a service, and that's the way the city administration looks at it. They will take this.
If I may follow up on it, that's why we set up pretty strict controls, and Wayne worked very closely along with others with Tom to make sure that the $75,000 was being spent in accordance with the city's wishes. Which is much different than, sorry to interrupt you, which is much different than what we do with grant agencies. Much different. So.
And I'll hold my comments to later on. As far as ongoing, do we have a number going forward? What did you ask me for the May 2009 season?
Yes, 65,000.
And that's less than the 75 here.
I think, yes, 75 is more.
75 is what we had last year, 65 is what we worked on this year. He's got more time to get more sponsors involved, and we felt, knowing our economies, that we had to cut back.
And it looks like there's, even though it looked like, I was a line item on the state budget, and the state budget wasn't tweaked this year. I was supposed to get some money from the state. It does look very positive. I'm going to get some money from the state, which is going to help subsidize the festival going forward.
So then next year just do 65 to go along.
It's possible.
Anything else? Any further discussion, comments? Well,
Through the chair, Tom. Tom, when you came in, you had to be this.
Yeah,
were you going to make some comments as well?
Yeah, I wanted to just say I am one of the. It's been my goal and vision right along in making my initial presentations to the town, and to this point, is to expand the scope of this festival and sort of dovetail with the tax credits, the educational components and the exhibition and competition components of the event. And there's, I gave you some information here with a couple of flow charts to show the organizational aspects, but also some articles on an event called the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas, which is a very famous festival and conference on the disciplines of filmmaking, video, TV, music, and interactive, which is multi and digital media, and is often referred to as social media nowadays on the internet. So just some information to read through, some articles to show about the South by Southwest Festival are in here. They're outlined on the front page. There's also some demographics from 2008 and 2007 going backwards. The full report, if you're interested, for 2008, it's the full financial impact analysis for 2008 is supposed to be available in June. I would love to put it in here because a lot of the numbers are pretty outstanding, but if you'd like to see more about it, you can look it up online. The 2007 economic impact analysis is in here. And you'll see the numbers are, there's numbers in here from a third party called Angelo Economics in Austin, Texas, and there's also numbers from the Convention Visitors Bureau there. So you can kind of compare them, but look over them. They're very interesting. It just shows, with the facilities and the numerous event partners that are already in place here, the facilities between downtown Mill Plain Road, the WCSU campuses, proximity to New York and the tri-state area of Boston, the high density of accommodations we have here. This place is perfectly situated to grow an event of this scope. So this is something that I'm moving forward with. And I just thought you'd find this to be interesting. And that's it.
anyone else? This time I'd like to know.
If I may, Tom, one more question. What would happen if you didn't get the money from the city?
I'd go to another city.
I don't look at this like the administration does, that we're hiring a guy to do something for us. I don't look at it like Joe Silva does, that it's good for downtown Danbury. I don't look at it like a grant agency application for a charity. I've got to look at this citywide. The days are over when we could call up a PR flag and get our city splashed across the front page of the newspaper with glowing reviews. We were in Money magazine, a couple of places to live, I think it was 25 years ago. Every community now is competing for the same thing. We're competing for businesses, we're competing for residents, we're competing for the best of the best, and Danbury's in there fighting with every other town in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and the Northeast. If we're going to push this city forward, we have got to have not necessarily film festivals, but we've got to do something that generates publicity, good stories in newspapers, and reasons for people to relocate here, and once they've come here, reasons for people to stay. Whether that's fixing up Campbell Lake, improving the airport, there's a million things the city could be doing, and the city, to its credit, is doing many of them. I consider this film festival to be an integral part of all of it. Does it benefit downtown? Absolutely. Is the city engaging this like they would with any other vendor? They probably are, and that's probably good to keep them on a business level. But I'm looking at this a little bit wider from a legislative point of view. And $75,000, $60,000, $100,000. If we spent it, a PR guy in New York City and LA to get our names in the papers on the wire services would last us a minute. We are getting probably direct and in-kind services, I don't know what the multiplier would be, but my guess is it's at least what the multiplier is that Jim Whitney's used. Whatever we're putting into this, we're getting $2 back. In what we're buying it for, what the administration is hiring the vendor for, which is essentially a publicized Danbury. Then, for free, we are getting a film festival and all of that entails. So I'm not just comfortable with the process. I'm excited by it. I'm a proponent of it, and I wish Tom great success, and we'll work to make sure that this film festival stays here in Danbury. So I am prepared to make a motion.
Please do.
I'd like to make a motion that the committee recommends to the Common Council they approve hosting the Connecticut Film Festival in May 2009 at a cost of $65,000, pending a positive recommendation of the contract by Corporation Council preceding the September meeting of the Common Council.
Second? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn? Oh, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.